Walk into any business event, any conference, any networking mixer, and you'll see the same pattern. Men working the room, trading cards, forcing conversations, building what they call connections. But 10 years later, when you look at who actually got somewhere, it's almost never the loudest networkers in those rooms. It's the men who never showed up, the Sigma males, the ones who skipped every event, declined every invitation, and ignored every coffee chat. And somehow, by the time their peers are still chasing introductions, the Sigma has a network so deep, so loyal, and so powerful that no amount of networking could ever replicate it. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how he did it without ever trying. This is Ultra Wise, and we're decoding one of the most counterintuitive truths about modern success. The world tells you that your network is your net worth. Build connections, shake hands, be everywhere, meet everyone. But what nobody admits is that this advice produces shallow networks that collapse under pressure. The Sigma plays a different game. He understands that real relationships aren't built in noisy rooms with people exchanging business cards. They're built in quiet moments, through consistent behavior, over years of being the kind of man other people actually want in their lives. He doesn't chase connections. He becomes someone connections chase. And by the time he's 40, the network he built without ever networking is stronger than anyone else's. In the next 20 minutes, I'll show you exactly how this works. If you've ever felt drained by networking events, fake conversations, or transactional relationships, this video is for you. You're not antisocial. You're just built for a deeper game. Hit subscribe to UltraWise and turn on notifications so the next video finds you. Drop the word WISE in the comments if you're tired of playing the loud version of success and ready to learn the quiet one. I publish deep breakdowns every week on the patterns of men who quietly take control of their lives. Now let's get into the 10 reasons why Sigma males skip networking and still end up with the strongest networks in any room. They reject the transactional model that defines most networking. The first thing the Sigma notices about traditional networking is the energy underneath it. Everyone is calculating. Every handshake comes with a hidden question. What can this person do for me? Every conversation has an agenda. Every follow-up email is part of a plan. The whole environment runs on transactional thinking, and most people don't even realize they're doing it. They've been taught that this is how the world works, so they participate without questioning it. The Sigma refuses to participate, not because he's above it, but because he sees through it. He understands that any relationship built on transactional energy will dissolve the moment the transaction stops being useful. The contact who values you for what you can give them will disappear when you can't give anymore. The connection who only calls when they need something will stop calling when they don't. The whole structure is built on sand, and the Sigma isn't interested in building anything on sand, so he opts out of the entire model. He doesn't go to events to extract value from people. He doesn't pitch himself in conversations. He doesn't follow up with strangers because they have a useful title. When he interacts with someone, it's because the interaction itself is meaningful, not because he's calculating future returns. This makes him strange at networking events. People can sense that he isn't playing the game and they don't know how to relate to him, so they often leave him alone, which is exactly what he wants. The result is that the few relationships he does build are completely different in nature. They aren't transactions. They're real. The other person isn't there because they want something from him. They're there because they genuinely value who he is. And because the foundation is real, the relationship can survive anything. Bad years, career changes, disagreements, distance. Nothing breaks it, because nothing transactional was ever holding it together. This is one of the first reasons Sigma males end up with stronger networks than the men who network their whole lives. They built fewer relationships, but they built real ones. While other men were collecting contacts, he was building bonds. While other men were optimizing for breadth, he was optimizing for depth. And depth, over time, always outperforms breadth in any meaningful way. The transactional networker has 1,000 people who will return his email. The Sigma has 10 people who would show up at his door at 3 a.m. The math isn't even close. They understand that surface connections collapse under real pressure. There's a moment that comes in every man's life when he learns the true value of his network. It's not the day he wants to get a raise. It's the day everything falls apart. The business goes under. The reputation gets attacked. The personal crisis hits. The illness arrives. The financial floor disappears. In those moments, the network gets tested in a way no networking event can simulate. And what the man discovers is that 90% of the people he thought were in his corner aren't actually in his corner. They were just in his contacts list. The Sigma figured this out earlier than most, either by watching it happen to someone else or by going through it himself in his 20s. He saw how quickly people disappear when there's nothing to gain from the relationship. He watched contacts who used to text him weekly go completely silent the moment his star dimmed. He saw friends evaporate when the social value of being around him dropped. The lesson was permanent. Surface connections don't survive pressure. They're a luxury good that only works in good times. So he stopped investing in them. He stopped wasting time on relationships that wouldn't be there when it mattered. He stopped going to events designed to produce surface connections. He stopped putting energy into people who were clearly only interested in him conditionally. And he started putting all that reclaimed energy into the small handful of people who had already proven, through actions over time, that they'd be there regardless of his current status. This is the second reason his network ends up so strong. He stopped wasting bandwidth on people who would disappear when he needed them, and he doubled down on the people who wouldn't. Over decades, this investment compounds into something other men can't replicate. He has relationships that have been tested, stress-tested, pressure-tested, crisis-tested, and every test that didn't break the relationship made it stronger. By the time he hits a major obstacle in his 40s, he's not alone the way most men are. He has people who show up, people who lend resources without being asked, people who defend his reputation when he's not in the room, people who hold his hand through the worst chapters of his life. None of these people came from networking events. They came from 20 years of him being selective about who he gave real time to and being loyal to the ones who deserved it. They focus on becoming worth knowing instead of trying to be known. Most men spend their networking energy on the wrong side of the equation. They try to be known. They optimize for visibility. They want to be seen at the right events, photographed with the right people, mentioned in the right circles. They confuse being known with being valuable. And because the metric is wrong, they end up famous in small ponds but mediocre in any meaningful way. The Sigma flips the equation. He doesn't try to be known. He tries to be worth knowing. The difference is enormous. Being known is about other people noticing you. Being worth knowing is about you being a person whose presence in someone's life actually changes it. One is a marketing problem. The other is a substance problem. And substance is built quietly, alone, over years of hard work that nobody applauds in real time. So while other men are at events trying to be seen, the Sigma is at home, getting better. He's studying his craft. He's developing rare skills. He's reading what most people don't read. He's thinking through problems most people avoid. He's building expertise, character, wisdom, the kinds of things that make someone genuinely valuable to know. None of this is visible. None of it shows up on social media. None of it gets him invited to anything. But all of it is making him into someone people will eventually want in their lives. And here's the part most networkers miss. Once you're actually worth knowing, you don't have to chase anyone. People find you. Word travels. The work speaks. A man who has spent 10 years quietly mastering something specific becomes a magnet for the right people without ever having to attend a single mixer. They come to him. They seek him out. They want introductions to him. The networking dynamic reverses entirely. This is one of the most overlooked principles in masculine development. Visibility without substance produces a brittle reputation that requires constant maintenance. Substance without visibility produces a durable reputation that grows on its own. The Sigma chose substance, and by his 40s, the reputation has grown so much in the background that he often doesn't even realize how known he's become in his actual field until someone tells him. He never sought it, he just earned it. And the network that gathers around a man like that is stronger than anything that could be assembled through deliberate networking. They build their network through work, not through events. The men who get the most out of networking aren't actually networking. They're working. They're showing up to a project with full focus. They're delivering on their commitments. They're solving problems that other people couldn't solve. And through that work, they're building relationships with the people who happen to be working alongside them. The relationships are a byproduct of the work, not the goal of the interaction. And that distinction changes everything. The Sigma understands this from the start. He stops trying to build relationships separately from his work and starts building them through his work. Every project becomes a context where his real character gets demonstrated. Every collaboration becomes an opportunity for the people around him to see who he actually is when things get hard. Every deadline becomes a chance for him to prove that he can be relied on. He doesn't have to sell himself with a pitch. The work does it for him. This is one of the most efficient forms of network building in existence. While the average networker is spending hours at events, talking to strangers who will forget him by next week, the Sigma is spending those same hours in deep work with 3 people who are watching him perform under pressure. Those 3 people will never forget him. They've seen what he's made of. They've seen how he handles failure, success, criticism, and stress. They have a level of information about him that no business card exchange could ever produce. And those 3 people each know 3 other people. Over time, the Sigma's reputation moves through their networks without him doing anything to push it. They mention him in conversations. They recommend him for projects. They vouch for him when his name comes up. The network expands organically, in concentric circles, through people who have direct experience of what he can do. This is the most credible form of expansion possible because every endorsement comes from someone who actually worked with him. By the time he's 40, this work-based network has grown into something other men can't match through any amount of networking effort. The relationships are professional, but they're also personal. They've been forged in real conditions. They've been tested by real stakes. And because they're rooted in shared work, they don't decay when one of the parties changes jobs, locations, or industries. The bond is in the experience, not the context. And that's the kind of bond that holds for decades. They filter aggressively. Quality over quantity compounds over time. There's a math problem most networkers don't understand. Every relationship in your life costs something: time, energy, attention, emotional bandwidth. The more relationships you have, the more those costs add up. And if you don't filter aggressively, you end up with hundreds of low-value relationships that collectively drain you while not giving you much back. Most men never run the math on this. They just keep adding contacts and wondering why they feel exhausted. The Sigma runs the math constantly. He understands that his time and attention are finite, and that every person he invests in is also a person he's choosing over someone else. So he gets selective. He has standards for who gets access to him. He pays attention to how people treat him over time, and he adjusts accordingly. The people who consistently add value, show respect, and operate with integrity get more of him. The people who consistently drain, disrespect, or operate transactionally get less. Eventually, the filter produces a curated network where every person earns their place. This sounds harsh until you see the results. The Sigma's smaller, filtered network outperforms the average man's bloated network in every measurable way. Each person is more loyal because they've been chosen and they know it. Each person is more capable because the filter selected for competence. Each interaction is more valuable because both sides are invested. The network is small, but it's dense with value. And dense value compounds in a way that scattered value never can. Meanwhile, the average networker is exhausting himself trying to maintain hundreds of relationships, most of which produce nothing. He has people in his phone he hasn't talked to in years. He has lunch obligations with people he doesn't even respect. He has a calendar full of low-value meetings that drain his real productive time. The cost of maintaining that bloated network is enormous, and most of the maintenance produces zero return. By 40, the gap between the curated network and the bloated network is undeniable. The Sigma has a small group of high-trust, high-capability people who actually move when called. The networker has 1,000 contacts who don't really know him. The curated network is one of the strongest assets a man can own. The bloated network is one of the heaviest burdens. The filter, applied consistently over 20 years, is the difference. And the men who refuse to filter early are the ones still wondering why their massive networks aren't producing anything in their later years. They refuse to perform. Authenticity attracts the right people. There's a specific exhaustion that comes from performing in social settings. The performance of being upbeat when you aren't. The performance of being interested in conversations you don't care about. The performance of being someone slightly different than who you actually are, just to fit the room. Most men do this constantly at networking events without realizing how much it costs them, both in energy and in the quality of the relationships they produce. The Sigma refuses to perform. He shows up as himself. If he's not interested in a conversation, he doesn't fake interest. If he doesn't agree with what someone is saying, he doesn't pretend to. If he doesn't want to small talk, he doesn't force himself to. This makes him appear cold or quiet to most people, but it produces something unexpected. The few people who actually connect with him connect with the real him, not a performance. And those connections are immediately deeper than the surface relationships everyone else is building. This is one of the most underrated principles of network building. Authentic connections form fast because authenticity is rare. When two real people recognize each other in a room full of performers, the recognition happens in minutes, not months. The conversation goes deeper than it should for a first meeting. The sense of being seen by another person is felt by both sides. And the relationship that forms from that recognition is fundamentally different from the relationships built on social performance. The Sigma collects these recognitions over years, not many of them, maybe a few per year at most. But each one is real. Each one is with a person who saw the actual him and chose to invest. And by his 40s, he has a small army of these connections, scattered across industries, locations, and contexts. None of them came from him performing. All of them came from him being honest about who he is, even when it was socially expensive to do so. This is also why his network has a different texture than other men's. The people in it aren't there because he charmed them or sold them on a version of himself. They're there because they saw the real him and chose him anyway. That foundation is unshakable. There's no performance to maintain, no image to protect, no role to keep playing. He can be tired around these people. He can be wrong. He can be in pain. He can be confused. None of it threatens the relationships, because the relationships were never about him being perfect. They were about him being real. And real is the only foundation that holds. They master one-on-one depth instead of group dilution. Group settings are designed to produce shallow interactions. The energy is divided. The conversations are interrupted. The topics stay surface level. The dynamics encourage performance over honesty. Most networking happens in group settings, which is exactly why most networking produces shallow results. You cannot build a deep relationship in a room where everyone is competing for attention, and nobody has the time or focus to actually go deep with another person. The Sigma understands this and adjusts. He prefers one-on-one settings, even when they're harder to arrange. A 2-hour walk with one person produces more relationship than 10 cocktail events. A single dinner with someone he respects produces more depth than a year of group dinners. He optimizes for environments where real conversation can happen, where two people can actually focus on each other, where the interaction has room to go somewhere real. He'd rather have one substantive conversation a month than 50 superficial ones. This produces a network with very different characteristics. The people in his life know him deeply because every interaction with him has been a real interaction. They've talked through hard topics with him. They've shared real things with him. They've seen multiple sides of him. The relationship isn't a flat surface like most networked relationships are. It has texture, depth, and history, and that depth is what makes the connection durable. Meanwhile, the average networker has hundreds of flat relationships. Each person in his network knows one or two surface things about him and nothing else. There's no history to draw on. There's no shared experience to anchor the bond. So when the relationship gets tested even slightly, a missed favor, an unreturned email, a slow response, it breaks easily because there was nothing underneath holding it together. The Sigma's relationships don't break because they have layers of one-on-one depth supporting them. By his 40s, this approach has produced a network of people who genuinely know him and whom he genuinely knows. He can call any of them, and the conversation will pick up exactly where it left off, even if it's been 6 months. They don't have to be reintroduced to who he is, because they never lost track of who he is. And he doesn't have to be reintroduced to their lives, because he actually pays attention. The result is a network that requires less maintenance and produces more value, because every relationship in it is already as deep as it needs to be. Most networkers maintain 1,000 shallow bonds. The Sigma cultivates 50 deep ones. The 50 win every time. They operate on long timelines that networking culture can't match. Networking culture is impatient. It wants results now, the introduction now, the deal now, the opportunity now. The relationships that get formed inside this culture are shaped by the impatience. People rush, they push, they expect returns within months. And when those returns don't come, they move on to the next contact. The whole system is built around short timelines, and short timelines can't produce deep relationships. The Sigma operates on a completely different clock. He thinks in decades, not quarters. When he seats someone he values, he doesn't try to extract value from the relationship in the first year. He invests in the relationship for 5 years, 10 years, sometimes 20 years, before there's ever a moment when the relationship pays him anything tangible. Most men can't operate this way. The patience required is too high. The delay between investment and return is too long. They drop out of relationships before the relationships have time to mature. This long timeline of thinking is the reason his network gets stronger every decade, while other men's networks plateau or decay. Every year he stays in someone's life adds another layer, another shared experience, another tested moment, another data point about who he is. By year 10, the relationship has texture that a one-year relationship can never produce. By year 20, the relationship has roots that almost nothing can pull up. And the Sigma is consistently planting these long roots while everyone else is chasing quick wins. The compounding effect is enormous. A network of 20-year relationships has a totally different power than a network of 2-year relationships. 20-year relationships have seen each other through marriages, careers, crises, victories, and failures. There's mutual investment in each other's lives at a level that can't be faked or fast-tracked. And when something serious comes up, these are the relationships that activate, not the contacts from last month's event, the decade-old bonds that have proven themselves over and over. Most men never give themselves the chance to experience this kind of network because they never stay invested in any one relationship long enough for it to mature. They keep moving, networking, refreshing their contacts. The Sigma stays. He invests in the same people for years longer than seems strategic. And by his 40s, the patience has paid off in a way that defies all the short-term optimization happening around him. He has a network with roots. The networkers have a network with branches but no roots, and roots are what hold up the tree when the storm comes. They give without expectation, and loyalty compounds in their favor. There's a quiet rule in real relationships that most networkers never figure out. You can't fake generosity. People can tell when a gift comes with an invisible string attached. They can tell when help is being given as a deposit on a future favor. They can tell when interest in their life is really interest in their usefulness. And while they may smile and accept the help in the moment, they file it away in the background as something that's not quite real. Over time, those filed observations turn into a quiet decision. This person isn't actually invested in me. They're invested in what I can give them later. The Sigma doesn't operate this way. When he gives something to someone in his life, he gives it cleanly. No strings, no invoice in his mind, no expectation of a future return. He helps because helping is the right thing to do for someone he respects. He shares resources because sharing them costs him nothing relative to what they're worth to the other person. He shows up because that's what real people do for each other. And he doesn't keep track of any of it because keeping track would corrupt the whole thing. This produces a strange phenomenon over time. The people he gives to without expectation become some of the most loyal people in his life. They sense the cleanness of the giving, and they respond with a kind of loyalty that can't be manufactured. They want to give back, not out of obligation, but out of genuine gratitude. They look for opportunities to support him. They mention his name in rooms he isn't in. They defend his reputation when it gets attacked. They show up when he needs something, often before he even has to ask. By his 40s, this generosity ledger has compounded into a kind of social wealth that no networker can replicate. There are dozens of people scattered across his life who genuinely owe him something, even though he never asked them to feel that way. And because they feel that way for real reasons, the loyalty is real. It doesn't expire. It doesn't shift when his usefulness changes. It just exists, like a quiet reserve of goodwill that he can draw on if he ever needs to. And that often gets activated on his behalf without him doing anything at all. This is one of the deepest principles of network building. Generosity without expectation is the highest yielding social investment a man can make. It looks like he's giving things away. He's actually building one of the most powerful asset classes in his life. And by 40, The asset class is paying him interest in every direction. All because he refused to be transactional 20 years ago when it would have been easier to be. By their 40s, their quiet network outperforms everyone's loud one. The final point ties it all together. By the time the Sigma is 40, his network looks unimpressive on paper. He doesn't have 1,000 connections. He doesn't have a public following. He doesn't have business cards stacked in a drawer. He doesn't have a polished LinkedIn. He has none of the visible signals that the world uses to evaluate networks. And because of that, most people underestimate his network completely, right up until they need something he can deliver and discover that he has access to almost any room he wants to walk into. This is the moment the quiet network reveals itself. The deep relationships he built over 20 years aren't visible from the outside, but they're enormously powerful in practice. One phone call gets him a meeting that most people couldn't get in a year. One introduction from someone who genuinely trusts him opens doors that no networking event could open. One quiet endorsement from a single high-trust contact does more than 100 surface introductions from networkers. The network operates with leverage that doesn't show up in any visible metric. Meanwhile, the men who network their entire lives are discovering an uncomfortable truth. Their massive contact lists don't actually move. The thousands of people they shook hands with don't show up when called. The acquaintances are still acquaintances, not allies. And when they need something real, a serious introduction, a high-stakes favor, a major endorsement, they realize that nobody in their inflated network is actually invested in their success. The network was a mirage, always was. The Sigma quietly outperforms all of them without ever having played the same game. He spent 20 years investing in 20 real people, while they spent 20 years collecting 20,000 surface contacts. 20 real people, by their 40s, control more doors than 20,000 contacts ever could. Because real people will fight for you. Real people will vouch for you. Real people will pick up the phone when you call. The visible network was always a vanity metric. The invisible network is the one that actually moves the world. And the Sigma was building the invisible one the entire time. So here's the question I want to leave you with. If you stop networking entirely starting tomorrow, and instead spent the next 10 years deepening 5 real relationships and becoming someone genuinely worth knowing, where do you think you'd actually end up? Drop your honest answer in the comments. I read everyone. If this video gave you a different way of seeing the game, hit subscribe to UltraWise so the next one finds you. Stay quiet, stay sharp. I'll see you in the next one.